The fleet wakes up with an over-the-air update. That's all it takes.
Let's talk about the radical idea that when Tesla's Robotaxi network goes live, Tesla will stop selling cars, will keep them for themselves, and run the Robotaxi network itself. Are you ready? Let's go.
What is net present value of a Robotaxi? On the order of a couple $100,000?
First, we'll look at the lifetime economics and annual economics of a Model 3 or Model Y Robotaxi. Then we'll compare the prospect of Tesla selling robotaxis and how that will turn out for them for profits versus Tesla keeping the robotaxis themselves and operating the robotaxis themselves. At the end, we'll look at comparing Model 3 or Model Y robotaxis versus single passenger pod car robotaxis and see which version of that makes more profit for Tesla as well. We're looking at a future with Tesla Model 3 robotaxis that are capable of 1 million miles of driving life, 1.6 million kilometers. We would expect that a robotaxi would get 500,000 miles out of that million miles or 800,000 kilometers paid. I think it might be closer to 600,000 miles or 900,000 kilometers, but you get the idea. And we would see a lifetime, over that lifetime, $1 a mile in revenue or 62 cents a kilometer for $500,000 or $600,000 in revenue for the life of that vehicle. Where does that dollar a mile come from? Well, it's pretty conservative when you realize that Uber and Lyft are getting about $2 a mile. And while over the long haul, a saturation of the market with robotaxis would reduce the cost eventually, for the short to medium term, probably the next 10 years or longer, there won't be enough robotaxis to satisfy all the demand. And so $1 a mile is probably a conservative price, as Elon explained.
There's like on the order of 2 billion cars and trucks in the world. So robotaxis will be in extremely high demand for a very long time. Probably $1 is conservative for the next 10 years.
Next, we need to look at cost per mile. It seems reasonable that a Model 3 or Model Y would have a roughly 15 cent per mile cost, or 9 cents per kilometer, which would add up to $150,000 over the course of its million-mile life. That 15 cents a mile might sound low, but the company Testloop is already running Model 3s and estimates its cost per mile at as low as 18 cents a mile. That's with a 500,000 mile life for the vehicle, when we are expecting the Model 3 robotaxis to last 1 million miles. So combine that and with future lower cost of production and more efficiency, it's very reasonable to see Tesla Model 3 and Model Y robotaxis getting as low as 15 cents a mile. That's 15 cents a mile in operating cost. Looking at it on a yearly basis, if your Tesla Model Y or Model 3 robotaxi does 100,000 miles and 60,000 of those miles are paid, I think that's about the right number. Some say 50,000, but let's go with 60,000. Then you're looking at $60,000 in revenue a year for your Model 3 or Model Y robotaxi. At 15 cents a mile, your cost over 100,000 miles is $15,000. That leaves you with $45,000 in profit on an annual basis. 60,000 minus 15,000 equals $45,000. Elon did a similar calculation at Tesla's Autonomy Day presentation. He came up with slightly different numbers, but we're in the same ballpark.
You say, what would be the probable gross profit from a single robotaxi? We think probably something on the order of $30,000 per year. So in nominal dollars, that would be, a little over $300,000 over the course of 11 years. Might be higher. I think these consumptions are actually relatively conservative. And this assumes that 50% of the miles driven are not useful. So this is only at 50% utility.
This gets us to the first big idea. Most people think Tesla is going to continue selling cars to customers. I think we're going to see Tesla decide to stop selling cars to customers, keep them themselves, run them as robotaxis, and just live off the profit from the robotaxis themselves. I believe this is going to be more efficient. There's less transactions cost. There's all kinds of reasons for it. I know it sounds crazy, but listen to what Elon said at Autonomy Day and tell me that doesn't sound a little bit like what I'm talking about.
In our own fleet, I don't know, I guess long term we have probably on the order of 10 million vehicles.
Tesla is planning on having 10 million of its own vehicles. Did you hear that?
We made an important change to our leases. So if you lease a Model 3, you don't have the option of buying it at the end of the lease. We want them back.
All the leased Model 3s and Model Ys are coming back and Tesla's going to keep them. They're not going to sell them.
Any locations where there's not enough supply for sharing, Tesla will just make its own cars and add them to the network in that place.
Tesla is going to make its own cars and add them to the network itself. There's basically two scenarios. Tesla can continue doing what it's doing now, selling the cars and getting a lot of cash up front, and then once the Robotaxi network goes live, Tesla would earn a percentage from the Robotaxi operation. Additionally, Tesla wouldn't have an operating burden. Tesla wouldn't have to own and maintain the cars themselves. That burden would fall upon whoever buys the car, that they would have to take care of that themselves. With the alternative that I'm talking about, Tesla doesn't get cash up front from a buyer, but they get recurring revenue, greater recurring revenue. Instead of earning a percentage from the Robotaxi network, they get everything. Transaction costs are reduced because they don't have to worry about the marketing of the car, the process of selling the car, the taxes involved in selling the car. And although they have to operate the network and own the cars, they would have economies of scale in that operation because they're doing such a high volume of it. Just to be clear about this, there are two big advantages for Tesla keeping the vehicles that should be obvious right on its face. First, the transaction cost for Tesla to keep the car versus selling it should be lower or effectively zero by comparison to the cost of selling cars to consumers. No marketing, no showrooms, no test drives, much easier and much less expensive. At the same time, the operating economies of scale. If you or I own a Robotaxi and we have to take care of wiper blade replacement, and we have to take care of charging, and we have to take care of all the other, even though there's not a lot of maintenance, there's still some maintenance that we would have to take care of. Tesla will be able to do that more cost effectively because they'll be doing it at such a large scale. If you take those two things into account, it should lower Tesla's cost per mile to maybe 10 cents a mile instead of 15 cents a mile for you and me. Not huge in the end, but it matters. Let's look at a single year of production for Tesla. Assume Tesla makes 1 million cars. Assume they could sell the cars for $100,000 and that they cost $30,000 to produce. And assume there's a $5,000 transaction cost in the sale between marketing and all that. Now I know in particular that $100,000 assumption of the sale price may sound controversial. Elon has said they might be worth sell for $200,000. It's very hard to put a number on the sales price. It really depends what share of the Robotaxi revenue or profit is the vehicle owner getting versus what Tesla is getting. The most common number I've seen is that the owner gets 70% of the revenue. Well, if the owner is only getting 70% of the revenue, then the value of the car to the owner is a lot less because their cost is still high, and it dramatically cuts into that owner's profit. When we get to the end, you'll see that although it matters, obviously if it sold for $200,000, it would be a much bigger result for the sell side. But at the end, I think you're going to see it really wouldn't make that much of a difference, and the argument for Tesla keeping the cars would still win out. So let's take a look at 1 year production and how that will play out over the years of that fleet of 1 million cars. On the sell side, that first year, you get $65 billion of profit on sales for Tesla. Add to that $18,000 a car as a Robotaxi share, 30% of $60,000, gives them $18 billion in Robotaxi revenue for $83 billion of profit in that first year for the sell approach. If Tesla keeps the cars, they get $50,000 in profit per car for $50 billion in profit in year one. So at the end of year one, the sell side is well ahead at $83 billion in profit versus $50 billion in profit. It's the remaining years that really help the keep version win out, because you continue making $50 billion in profit a year on that revenue, where on the sell side you're only making $18 billion in profit a year on that first fleet of 1 million cars. So while you made a big chunk of profit on the sales in the first year, and you could even double that profit on sales in the first year, you still wouldn't by the end of 10 years keep up. But assuming it's a $100,000 sales price, the keep approach actually gets ahead of the sell approach in only 3 years. So in the keep approach, Tesla ends up making $500 billion in profit over 10 years versus $245 billion in profit over 10 years on the sell approach. So the keep approach is winning by a long way. I should add, this doesn't account for whatever residual value those Model 3 Robotaxis have left at the end of that million-mile life. I don't think that'll be a significant factor, but it's entirely possible that they could be reconditioned for a small amount and sent back out to keep making more money. I also want to make my pitch here for why I think Tesla will make pod car robotaxis, single passenger robotaxis, instead of regular Model 3, Model Y style robotaxis. It's not going to be that obvious on the first slide, but let's look at this. Suppose the cost per mile of a Model 3, Model Y robotaxi works out to 10 cents a mile. That's $10,000 a year in cost, and let's say $50,000 a year in profit on that $60,000 in revenue we talked about. Now turn that to the pod car. If you get the cost down to 4 cents a mile, you're not making that much more a year. You're making $56,000 a year instead of $50,000 a year. That's something, but it's the next slide that's going to show you why it really matters, why the pod cars will make Tesla so much more money. This is where it's big. The regular Model 3 Robotaxi will have a 50 kilowatt hour battery pack. You can make 1 million of them a year and make $50 billion a year in profit. With the pod car, you don't need as big of a battery pack. You can do 10 kilowatt hour battery packs and make 5 million of them a year, and you'll make $280 billion a year in profit. The big deal here is that Tesla has been battery constrained for a long time, and that battery constraint is likely to continue no matter what happens at Battery Day. There will always be battery constraints, and if they make pod car robotaxis, they'll be able to make far more of them, reach far more of the market, and still get $1 a mile while having much lower cost per mile and be able to make more of them. And that's why Tesla would make more profit making pod car robotaxis than regular robotaxis and keeping them instead of selling them. What do you think? Do you think Tesla will keep selling cars to people, or do you think what I'm saying makes sense and it would be crazy for Tesla to sell cars to people when they can keep them and make more money on them just running their own robotaxi network? Let me know in the comments. Post this on social media, Twitter, with your opinion, and tag me. Let me know what you think. And please, of course, subscribe, like this video, and tell your friends. Share this video so other people see it. Get them to offer their opinion. What do they think? How can Tesla do better than what I proposed here? Let me know what you think, and thank you very much for watching.